Welcome to Retro Tech Today. Today we're going to be jumping back in time to examine one of the most important technologies to change the course of music distribution and the everyday listening experience. That's right, we're talking about the CD. The CD, short for compact disc, is a medium for storing digital data. Essentially, this circular piece of plastic with a thin layer of aluminum sandwiched inside measures 4.7 inches and uses a laser to recall the data stored on the disc. In 1982, the average computer had a massive hard drive of 10 megabytes. However, the CD could store up to 700 megabytes. Yeah, by today's standards, that's pitiful. But back then, the words hard drive and megabytes seemed like medical terms that you would hear from a neurosurgeon talking to another physician. However, the CD may not have become so popular if it wasn't for one event. In 1982, Sony released the first commercial CD player to North America. Both Sony and Philips developed a partnership to bring digital audio into households. However, Sony was first to the market. Known as the CDP-101, this device cost around $1,000 or $2,000 by today's standards and was truly groundbreaking. As you can see, we have the original box and manual for the CDP-101. I really want to pause and let that sink in for a moment. That's a lot of cash to throw down on a brand new device with some strange medium to play music. Vinyl up to that point had been king, and now consumers were being asked to invest in a brand new technology that seemed science fictional. Just look at the CDP-101's box. Devoid of nearly any graphics and information. A simple box with the words compact disc and digital boldly written as if the average consumer understood those terms. People were used to buying tapes and records, things that had been around for ages. Then all of a sudden they were being asked to reconceptualize how they would play a simple song. Plus, at the staggering price of $1,000, Sony was taking a huge gamble. Let's look at the CDP-101. As with any product, creative and effective marketing will make or break the product. Marketing experts knew the success of CDs relied on the emphasis on being digital. Sure, the quick access to finding a track was great, along with the smaller size of the medium. However, the real key was telling people it was digital. Yeah, digital. It claimed that it was like listening to the original master recordings, clear, pristine, and exactly what the artist had intended. I'm not really sure if anyone understood what digital really meant other than being associated with a computer. The CDP-101 uses a single 16-bit digital to analog converter known as a DAC to convert digital audio analog signals that can be heard by ears. This is done by using pulse code modulation and a sample rate of 44.1 kilohertz. DAC, 16-bit, pulse code modulation, 14.1 kilohertz? What is any of this? What does this have to do with playing my favorite 7-inch single of Rhinestone Cowboy? That's what most people were probably thinking. However, the idea of becoming digital quickly became the fashion statement for playing music. If you loved music, and I mean really loved music, then buying the CDP-101 was an investment. At least that was the argument. Vinyl and tapes were said to be inferior because they were analog. If you know anything about something being digital, it means you won't lose quality over time, and an exact copy can be made from it indefinitely. A tape or vinyl record, each time that medium is played, it can slowly deteriorate over time. I'm not going to say it's going to happen overnight, but continual playing over time will probably cause noticeable sound differences. That's why, if you loved music, CDs meant each time you played a disc, whether it be 1,000 times for the first time, it would always sound exactly the same. Music lovers needed digital. They needed to know they were getting digital music just like the artist had supposedly wanted. Of course, one way this was done was by using SPARS codes. For many years, especially in the early years, a 3-letter code was placed at the back of CD jewel cases. AAD, ADD, DDD, and DAD. The A always represents analog, and the D always represents digital. These codes stood for the process in which a particular disc was produced. The first letter always stood for the type of recording device used to capture the original audio. Generally, it was a tape-based recorder. The second letter was for the recorder used during the mixing phase. And the third letter stood for the mastering process. In this case, a CD was always digital. This was pretty much marketing hyperbole because even if the album was recorded using the DDD process, it didn't mean much. The quality of equipment that actually recorded the audio determined the fidelity. I will say there are a lot of analog recorders that perform much better than a lot of digital recorders. I recall walking through the record stores with my stepdad as he went on his weekly music hunt. He would show me these codes and always point out that it didn't matter if it was AAD or ADD. If it was a terrible album, being mixed digitally was a moot point. Anyway, if you look at the CDP-101, you will notice it's pretty simple. You hit the open button, put the disc in the tray, hit close, and you're ready to play any song on the disc. I can't tell you how mind-blowing it was seeing that disc tray open and placing this silver disc in it, then hearing music. I guess it could be equated to the feeling people got when they first saw and heard records. The CDP also has an anti-shock switch on the back, which is very strange. I mean, I get the premise of it, since CDs, much like records, are prone to skipping if the players bump or experience vibrations. However, did they think someone was going to use this while driving a dump truck? It makes sense for a portable unit, but kind of strange for it to be on a unit that remains static. This bad boy weighs in at 16 pounds 9 ounces. You would be hard pressed to bump this thing and make it skip. The massive overly sized heatsink on the back ensures that it won't overheat even during the most intensive dance party. Regardless if the CDP-101 is a well-built machine, it was the CDs that influenced music distribution. The first disc sold here in the US was Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA. Personally, I think it was a fabulous choice because the boss is pretty awesome, and the album was mixed very well to represent the technical capabilities of the CD. Beyond having just a clean sound that was really good, CDs became the de facto medium for music for a couple of reasons. One, they were just the right size. They seemed to fit perfectly in your hand and made changing albums a breeze. Vinyl was bulky, having a diameter of 12 inches while the CD was less than 5 inches in length. Looking at the album art cover on vinyl was much better because of the sheer size. However, the album sleeves were made out of paper and would split over time. The actual vinyl always seemed to be a little bit too heavy and caused the seams to split. CDs were light and came in protective jewel cases while retaining the artwork and any insert information. That is alone why I believe CDs were the last great medium for music distribution. It was nice to have something tangible to hold and read. It was like getting an added bonus to the music. The inserts might have lyrics, additional artwork, or information. It just made the experience a little bit better. It reminds me of eating a bowl of cereal, and as you sit there and eat it, you have the box you read. It may have games or other information. It just makes it a little bit more special. With vinyl, that was part of the experience. CDs inherited that trait, only in a more portable level. I know what you're thinking. What about cassettes? Yes, they did the exact same thing, but it always seemed a little too small to read or view. Plus, with cassettes, most of the time, those inserts were converted to big, long, folded pieces of paper that never really held up over time, or didn't fold up very well. Another reason was because, unlike vinyl or cassettes, the listener didn't need to flip the medium. Nothing was more frustrating than having to get up and flip a record or tape so you could hear the other half of the album. Yeah, it sounds kind of lazy, but if you were relaxing and getting into an album, getting up to flip the album put a real damper on the rhythm. The ability to access a song also gave people another reason to migrate over to compact disc. Cassettes required you to fast forward and rewind to try to find your favorite song. In most cases, you either overshot it and had to rewind, or you would stop a little short and then have to fast forward, and you'd always hear that part of the song that you didn't want to hear from the previous track, which really sucked. If you listen to an album over and over on vinyl, you might have become really good at eyeballing and to spot on the record where you needed to put the needle. But that was at the risk of scratching the record. It was also great because on CDs you could make your own playlist. You could tell the player to play only the tracks you wanted, or even shuffle the tracks. Try doing that with a cassette or a record. Something else that I believe that really helped CDs more desirable than vinyl was the fact the albums had spines that could actually be read when they were placed upright. For everything wonderful vinyl has done, creating an efficient method for sorting and looking through albums wasn't one of them. Many years ago, there were these buildings that warehoused and sold vinyl called record stores. Yeah, I know, sounds kind of alien, kind of like a toy store. Anyway, going to a record store and sifting through all the vinyl required you to flip through all the albums one by one. Yes, I'm lazy and prefer to scan down the shelf to find what I want. CDs, on the other hand, you could see quickly all the albums and save time. Plus, a large row of CDs displayed on a shelf just looked cool. As a side note, just in case you are wanting to explore one of those relics called a record store, I recommend you check out Used Kids Records and Magnolia Thunder Pussy, located on North High Street in Columbus, Ohio. Trust me, these are amazing shops and you are bound to find something good at one of them. While no medium is immune from being damaged, CDs for the most part were pretty reliable. Yes, they could be scratched when not handled properly, but for the most part they held up pretty well. Cassettes would become tangled or eaten in the player. Vinyl had the bulky stylus that could easily scratch the record if you didn't lift up the stylus correctly or simply moved it wrong. Also, bumping the player could damage both the record and the player. CDs are pretty much immune to that damage because they use a laser light to read the data. Is that to say they're perfect? No. Like any optical medium, laser rot is very common. Basically, laser rot is the term used to describe the oxidation process that can occur when a disc isn't stored correctly or has excessive scratching. The layers of the disc slowly start to dissolve over time, thus creating small pinholes that make the disc unreadable. It used to be said that a CD would last up to 200 years. However, over the last decade, that claim has found not to be true. Dust particles, small scratches, poor adhesive, and variations in the temperature have proved CDs have a limited lifespan. As CDs became more popular in the early 1990s, publishers attempted to capitalize on this success by coming up with new gimmicks. For example, playing on the digital theme, the gimmick of 20-bit audio was used. 20-bit. Wow, I thought CDs were only 16-bit. That extra 4 bits of data must mean this album's going to sound even better. No. Regular CDs still cap out at 16-bit. That 20-bit referred to the mastering tape of the original audio. So in the end, the CD was still 16-bit. Another gimmick was the idea of CD singles. While the idea of the single has been around forever, CDs developed a new spin on this concept. CDs had a plastic container called jewel cases that stored and protected the disc. However, as time went on, some publishers went from traditional plastic cases to cardboard containers. They claimed it was more eco-friendly and helped reduce waste. These cardboard cases offered more real estate for graphics because the graphics could wrap around and even through the inside of the case seamlessly. The traditional jewel case couldn't do the seamless wraparound because the front and back were separated by structural components. Of course, my favorite gimmick for the CD single was when they released the single in 2 parts. Yes, 2 parts. It kind of seems silly to call it a CD single when it had 2 discs. Nevertheless, this gimmick consisted of going to a record store one week to buy the latest single. The single would be in an awesome cardboard case, but there would be an empty slot for another CD that was coming out next week. This disc might have remixes or B-sides. When you went and bought the second disc, you were supposed to throw out the second disc case and place that second disc inside the case of the first one. Now, I know what you're thinking. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. The whole premise of the cardboard case was to reduce waste. I'm really not sure how creating a second case just to be thrown out actually reduces waste, but if you were a purist, you operated under this counterintuitive paradigm. The reality was that this whole 2-part CD single was just a gimmick to get you coming back to the store to buy more records or albums. Eventually, CDs became recordable, and that changed the playing field. Cassettes could be recorded, but each time you copied audio to a tape, it never made an exact copy because it was analog. When CDs first came around in 1990, they clocked in over at $10,000. In 1995, Philips manufactured the first affordable, which debuted at $995. Is it just me, or does that seem kind of coincidental that the CDP-101 cost around $1,000 too? It seems like the $1,000 price point is the golden number to gain market traction. Even today, it's not uncommon for cell phones or another device to charge that amount to gain market traction. Anyway, with the advent of the first CD recorder, it accelerated the decline of both cassettes and vinyl. We could make our own custom soundtracks by taking all our favorite tracks and placing them on a single disc. This was a new level of customization that sounded great and easy. Simply tell the recorder what tracks you wanted from another album, and shazam, it was copied over. No more inferior dubbing. CDRs became incredibly popular and portable. Plus, as the years went by, CDRs became cheaper than cassettes, so it just made more sense from a financial standpoint to invest in a CD recorder. As time went on, mini discs were created, which could be recorded and offered the same sound specs as the traditional CD. They never really caught on because CDs were so cheap and available. It didn't really make any sense to have to go out and buy a new player for a new medium that sounded exactly the same as a CD. So the mini disc flopped. However, in 1999, the CD took its last stand before becoming obsolete. It was known as the Super Audio CD. Unlike the mini disc that didn't offer any more fidelity, the Super Audio CD was the ultimate format for music. Much like the CD, it too offered uncompressed audio. However, it was more like a DVD because it could hold 4.7 gigabytes of data, and it needed that extra storage because Super Audio CD played more samples per second. It offered higher dynamic range to help hear every little note, and the ability to have 6 multi-channels as well as the traditional 2 stereos of a CD. Of course, this required yet again another new player, and the fact was most people couldn't tell the sound difference between a CD and a Super Audio CD. In order to really hear the difference, you needed high-end speakers or studio monitors. Most people simply couldn't afford to purchase a new player, a new audio setup, and rebuy most of the albums they already owned. Plus, by that time, people were starting to use their computers to store music by converting CDs to MP3s. In my opinion, the CD was indeed the last greatest medium for music distribution. It gave us clean sound that was semi-portable. It carried over the tradition of cover artwork as well as high-quality inserts. More importantly, the CD helped bridge the gap between analog and digital by offering a tangible experience, being able to physically hold an album in your hands and not have it stored on a hard drive. We salute the CDP-101. And this has been your Retro Tech. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave them below, and thank you for watching.
No one to talk with all by myself.